I have a couple of flashlights here. Neither of them has any battery. It's just kind of nice. If you keep an emergency kit, it's probably a good idea to have a flashlight of this kind of design. Inevitably, you make your emergency kit, and then the disaster, the earthquake, whatever the case is, comes along years later, and by then your batteries are dead and your flashlight doesn't work. But these don't require any batteries, so this is a good type to keep in your emergency kit. They operate based off of Faraday's law, the one that tells us that a change in magnetic flux leads to a voltage. In fact, we can say this a little better. We say that the induced EMF, which is our voltage, is equal to negative the time rate of change of magnetic flux. The negative sign has to do with something known as Lenz's law, and I have some other videos that will illustrate how Lenz's law factors into Faraday's law. Let me remove these for a moment and show you without a doubt that it's not just the change of flux, it's the rate of change of flux that matters. So this is a hand crank generator, and when I turn the handle, you can't see it, but I'm spinning a coil of wire, right? You can figure that's probably what's going on here. The cranking is spinning a coil of wire, and also internal to this are some stationary permanent magnets. So as the coil spins, there's a steady change in flux due to the change in the vector orientation between the plane of the coil and the direction of the magnetic field lines. Oop, our light flipped over. So if I crank it slowly, then the light bulb glows a little bit, so I only get a little bit of voltage. If I crank it rapidly, then I get much more voltage. It's rate of change that we're looking for. That's the key. This flashlight just makes another way. Instead of cranking, when I squeeze the handle, you can see the gears on here, and the gears spin the little flywheel. And on this one, I actually believe it's the magnet that's spinning in the presence of a stationary coil. I don't know how well you can see this if I bring it close, but this thing spins around and it's a magnet, and then there's the coil. So as long as there's relative motion between coil of wire and magnet, there's a rate of change of flux, and it produces a voltage, an EMF. This one has a magnet, and when I flip it the other way, the magnet passes and falls through this coil. So again, in this case, I'm moving the magnet relative to a stationary coil. If you just keep moving it back and forth, or you can shake this back and forth, whatever gets the magnet to move through the coil. This one, if you just do that for a long time, then it eventually charges up a capacitor that's in here, and so I can store the electricity, and then when I turn it on, the light's there. Okay, I probably have to shake this one longer to store up enough energy in that capacitor. You know what I thought would be a good idea? Is if they had something like this in buoys out in the ocean. So if you had a coil of wire in a buoy that's floating on top of the surface of the ocean, and then as the waves come along and roll, if the magnet has a different amount of inertia than the coil of wire, as the waves make the buoy bounce up and down, there'd be motion between the magnet and the coil, and then you could have wires that instead of feed to a capacitor inside a flashlight, they could go down through the sea floor and go to some storage facility for the electricity and feed that into the grid. But I can't take credit for that. That already exists. I think there's plenty of locations that generate green energy based off of wave energy. So Faraday's law, pretty neat.